This is how to cook the perfect steak for both the bloke and for the gentleman. Now look, if you want to get to just the juicy bits, check the description below and you can see exactly when and where how to cook each steak. Now before we can cook the steak, we need to get the perfect steak. And there's two ways you can get the best produce. First one is you can get up early and beat everyone else there, or the second is you can have a good relationship with a quality purveyor. And I'm super lucky that I live about 100 meters from the butcher right there, which is awesome because they do really good quality meats. A lot of it's grass-fed, great chicken, great poultry and all that kind of stuff as well. Now if you want the perfect steak, you can't just settle for any cut of meat. But in saying that, it doesn't mean you need to go and buy the most expensive New York cut or strip or whatever they've got available. Because in fact, with the gentleman's cut, we're actually using one of the shittier cuts of meat. So here's the butcher behind me, gonna go and check it out and actually gonna get some steak, get some meat, okay, show you guys what we're gonna use, but also why. So you've got heaps and heaps and heaps of different kind of steaks here. This one right here is one of my favorites. So it's what you call your cattleman's cutlet. So it comes from one of the ribs. It's a thicker piece than normal. And if you could imagine, it comes from rib like 6 to 12. So that's where the full ribs. If you see that where that bone is, that there is gonna be the rib cage. Then inside here is where the organs would be. And then this piece of meat here, that's the muscle on the back and side of the cow. Then next you got one of these other ones here, also a really good one. It's a blade steak. This comes from the similar part of the cow as does the chuck. So even though it looks really nice and lean, smooth, soft and tender, it's actually a little bit chewy if you cook it too much. So for me, I find this one's best if you really cook it nice and slow. So apart from that, you've got this one over here, which is called a chuck steak, which looks kind of gnarly, like gristly and a little bit shitty, and doesn't look that amazing for pan frying. In actual fact, it's a perfect piece of steak to slow cook. You can see all the tendons and the fat, and as you cook that, it's all going to melt down, become really nice and soft and tender without going real dry. Then you've got your favorite, your premium Scotch fillet, which comes from a very similar position as the cattleman's cutlet. So if you want to imagine like your back muscles running down your back, this is basically the Scotch fillet. Down either side of the spine is where that comes from. Not much connective tissue in here, really good for pan frying, really soft, really tender. You want to cook it hot, you want to cook it quick so it doesn't dry out. But my, without a doubt, favorite cut of meat is your brisket. Okay, so this is kind of like the chest muscle of the cow. Now this one's already marinated. We've got one that's not, because we're just doing a simple steak. But this is loads of connective tissue. It's got lots of, you can't see in the back. It's got lots of fat marbled through it. It's perfect for slow cooking, but we're gonna turn it into the ultimate steak today. So we've got two pieces of meat, okay, for 35 bucks, which might seem quite expensive. The cattleman's cutlet was actually 25 bucks, but it is a piece of meat, okay? This is actually for the bloke steak. 25 bucks, 500 grams per cutlet, okay? And then by contrast, we actually got a piece of brisket, 300 grams, but there's no bone, so it's about the same meatage, I suppose you could say, but it's only 10 bucks, okay? And now, even though that's for the gentleman's cutlet, we're actually gonna put some cooking methods, some cooking techniques, and a little bit of care and love in it to help it, or maybe even outshine the cattleman's cutlet, okay? But that's actually cooking it. Let's get into that now. Alright, so I've got all my stuff here. I just got to get set up, got to get tidied up and get ready to roll so we can show you how to turn a cheaper cut of meat into something absolutely amazing. And we've got the most important part, the meat. So this is our bloke's cut of meat. This is the cattleman's cutlet, okay? You can see here, this is where the rib comes around, so this is actually bone. And you can see where it would come around, form the rest of the animal, and then all this meat here comes from down the side, down the back of the animal, okay? So this is our cattleman's cutlet, really prime cut of meat. You can see there's not a lot of fat or connective tissue. There's a big solid piece of muscle. You can see the erectors or the back that would, this medallion I suppose, that would be through here, and then all of the rest of the stuff through here. So you want to cook this hot, fast, in a high heat, sear the outside, get a nice caramelization on it, but you don't want to let it cook too long because this piece will definitely dry out. Next to that, gentleman's cut, and you can see like massive difference, okay, completely huge. Like fat comparison wise, this has so much more fat on it. I mean, like look at that compared to this, you know, there's such a huge difference here. And you can also see that this here on the top, this is actually not fat, but this is all connective tissue. So if you cook this hot and fast without giving it enough time to render and melt, or I suppose turn back into collagen, then this is going to be extremely tough. And even if you pull it apart, you can kind of start to see all the connective tissue in along there. That means this needs some time to cook, whereas this one is all meat. You can see it's all just muscle fibers in there. So this needs hot, high heat. Alright, so we're going to start off with our gentleman's cut first, probably because it's actually, I suppose, the technically more complicated, but the easier to prepare. So you can see it's got a whole heap of fat on here, all this connective tissue through here. So we're actually not going to sear it yet, okay? And we're not going to get that caramelization. By the way, when you sear a piece of meat, it actually doesn't do shit, okay, for sealing the meat in. It doesn't seal it, that you can't seal the meat, it's not going to become watertight. But what that sear does is it gets a nice caramelization on it, and that caramelization adds flavor, because you're caramelizing the sugars, you're making that part of the meat slightly sweeter, okay? So next time your friend tells you seal the steak, you can tell him he's full of shit, because sealing it doesn't exist. Now normally what happens when you cook a piece of steak, okay, is you cook the outside with the high heat, and it cooks towards the center to get your desired temperature, rare, medium, well done, or whatever, right? Now, normally what happens is the outside that's closest to the pan or closest to the heat gets cooked first, and it usually becomes overcooked, I suppose you could say. So that's why you get that medium well, medium rare as you get closer towards the center. What sous vide does is it keeps the meat at a certain set temperature. Okay, today we're going to do it at 59 degrees because we're going to cook these steaks to medium, which is how I like it done. It keeps it at 59 degrees, so it means that it's not going to be over medium, it's not going to become well done, but it's going to get that really long time to cook, so that all this connective tissue right here, all this stuff can break down, and all this fat can render and become soft and get back into the meat and help to kind of moisturize the meat, so it becomes really soft, really tender, really juicy, but it's still at that nice medium where it's not, you know, like braised beef. So, very easy. First thing you need to do, okay, always season your meat. So just using salt, keep it really nice and simple. And you want to season all 4 sides so that the salt gets into meat. Biggest difference between home cooks and professional cooks is seasoning, the amount of salt they use, okay? And then we're going to put this into a backpack bag, which is just like, I suppose, a high tensile bag, I don't know, durable bag. But you can just use like a Glad bag at home, like one of those Ziploc bags. And then, so this is our water circulator here. See, we've got our water down there. And basically what this is going to do, it's going to keep it at a constant temperature, okay? So we've got it set. So we've got it set to 59 degrees here. Just going to turn that on. And at the moment it's 23.4, and it's going to bring the water up to temperature. So we're just going to pop our beef in there, peg it down so it doesn't float around, and then we're going to let that cook for 18 hours. So this is the piece of brisket that I cooked a little bit earlier. Okay, so it's cooked for 18 hours. See, it looks really different. But if we flip it over, you can start to see that all this fat has really rendered down. Remember, that was really big before. But you can also start to see it's also quite soft. You can actually pull the meat apart. It's nice and tender. All that connective tissue has had time to break down. The only problem is, it now looks like shit. Okay, no one wants to eat that. Doesn't look appetizing, doesn't look delicious. It's brown, it's got no texture, it's got no color. It's looking real average, but it tastes good. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to sear it off, get some nice caramelization, finish it up, make it look really, really pretty and beautiful. So you want to get your pan almost smoking hot. Alright, now you don't need to deep fry the shit out of it. So we're going to put a tiny little bit of oil, okay, maybe it's like half a teaspoon, and you would just want to get enough oil to make contact with the meat to the pan. Plus too much oil makes it unhealthy, which is not great. Alright, so our pan is hot. Now as a general rule, you want to cook the prettiest side first, so that's this one, okay, because that's what you want to be your presentation side. So that goes in, just press it nicely down into the pan. Ooh, listen to that sizzle. Ooh, don't that start to look better? Sometimes you just want something you can put on the barbecue, put in the pan, that's going to be beautiful, tasty, tender, juicy, which is exactly this. So that's our cattleman's cut right here, or cattleman's cutlet right here, so you can see it's really, really, really thick. They've wrapped it with some twine just so it holds its shape. So again, we're going to want to get our pan quite hot because we want to get that initial sear to get that caramelization, but we don't want to burn it, alright? If it's too hot, gets cooked too much, then it's going to get burnt later on. So get our pan on, get it reasonably hot, going to season the steak, and you want to check to see if you can find any parts of the meat that are real fatty, okay? This doesn't have a lot of it, because like I said before, it comes from one of the leaner cuts. Actually, a cut that is quite close to this, that's quite commonly used, is what's called the sirloin, which almost joins to this thing. And the reason it's called a sirloin is because it was actually knighted. So it was a loin, it was a piece of meat that got knighted and it became a sirloin. So you can see we've got a little bit of fat here, so we're just going to cook that first to render it down. So meat goes in. So now this has the bone in, which means it's going to take longer to cook, okay, but it also means it gives it more flavour, retains more moisture, and it looks pretty cool. So, because we don't actually have a set temperature gauge on what temperature we're going to cook it to, we actually need to figure out what temperature it is inside without knowing, I suppose. And I'll show you a really, really easy trick using your thumb and fingers to figure out how far along or how cooked it is, so that you don't overcook it, it doesn't go dry, and you don't get a shitty cut of meat and lose friends at your next barbecue. So a really, really easy way to check that how cooked that this steak is if you use your hand, okay? So see this muscle right here, kind of where the base of my thumb is? If you press your index finger and thumb together, just softly touch this, then that's what a rare steak should feel like, okay? And then if you do your your middle finger and touch the muscle here, this part on the base of your thumb, then that's what medium rare should feel like. Ring finger to thumb is medium, okay, and then last one is your little finger to the base of your thumb, which I don't know I can really reach, and that's medium well. And then well done is you just keep cooking it until it's fucked, basically. The reason no one likes medium well is because the meat just ends up so dry. Alrighty, so this steak is looking pretty good. It feels about medium rare, which is perfect. So now all we want to do is we want to let it rest. And there's one really easy trick you can do to let it rest. Normally people say find a warm place, you know, get a cake rack, do all this fancy shit. Honestly, just turn the gas off. Look at that glorious steak. So we're going to give it about 3-4 minutes in the pan, let it rest, and then we're going to eat. Damn. That is a piece of meat. Alright, let's get into this, because now that we've got two beautiful looking steaks here, they both look amazing. This is your brisket, your gentleman's cut. This is your cattleman's cut, your bloke's cut. First of all, I want to make sure they're cooked well. Want to make sure they're also delicious, but I want to let you guys know which one I prefer and the pros and cons of each. So, this is what our brisket looks like. Now, slightly over medium, not by a lot, but there's no like distinct color gradient. You can see it's all the same color. Then you've got this thin caramelization at the top, thin caramelization at the bottom. Whereas if we go over to our cattleman's cutlet, you can see that it's your much more distinct medium with that sear or that caramelization on the outside. Then it looks like it's kind of overcooked. Like if you were just to look at this part here, that's like a medium well. But then here in the center you can start to see that you've got that bit of pink, and then down here you've got the same at the top. So that's kind of what your traditional medium looks like. But you can see with the brisket, now these are almost the exact same color in the center. It's just because you've got that difference in color gradient. So, but by far the most important thing is how does it taste. First up is brisket. It's not bad. It's reasonably soft. It's definitely not dry. It's still got a bit of bite to it that, like, I suppose a medium kind of steak would. It's tender, it's soft, it's juicy. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. So that's our brisket. Now this is your traditional cattleman's cutlet, and you know, it looks beautiful. It's pink. Okay, it's got a nice sear on the outside. It's tasty, it's juicy, it's easy to cook. All in all, both awesome steaks and both awesome cuts of meat. Okay, you got to remember though, this cattleman's cutlet was 25 bucks, this brisket was 10. Okay, so less than half the price for the same amount of meat. Now look, the grand result, okay, which one is better? Is it the gentleman's cut or is it the bloke's cut? And my honest opinion is it goes to both, okay, because both are so good. They've both got their pros, they've both got their cons, and they've both got different situations. Now the brisket, okay, it came in at less than half the price. It took a lot longer to cook, and you needed some fancy equipment, alright? But if you want to impress someone, okay, maybe first date, they're coming over to your home for the first time or something, the brisket, okay, slow cooked and seared on the outside to give it a nice crust with a couple of nice smoky sauces is an absolute winner, because it's different, it's new, it's interesting, it gives a different taste, a different texture to a normally either braised piece of meat, okay, that's soft and tender, but this gives it a whole different kind of feel. Okay, however, on the other hand, the cattleman's cutlet is perfect for when you've got mates around, a barbecue, you want to have some beer, enjoy good company and good times, something that you can put on the barbecue, put in the pan, leave it, okay, and go, come back in 10-15 minutes and it's done. Both will give you an exceptional steak. They've both got their pros, both got their cons, and they're both perfect for different situations. So I hope you found this useful. You now know 2 ways to cook the perfect steak every time without fail. You can impress your friends, impress someone special, get it right every time. So if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button down below, give me a little thumbs up so I know what to do more of, and of course don't forget to subscribe. New videos every Thursday.